You know, we've been hearing about crosses being taken down all over China. The persecution of Christians is increasing, if you can believe that, because China has a long history of really going after the followers of Jesus. Bob Fu is the founder and president of China Aid, an organization that helps persecuted Christians in China legally as well as with practical things. Bob, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Greg, for having me.
And you're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Recently, you're with the U.S. Senate. Tell me what you were doing there.
I was invited by the chairman, Senator Ted Cruz, on the Senate Judiciary Committee, the subcommittee on Constitution, to testify on religious freedom in China and also a discussion in the U.S.
Were they open to what you had to say, Bob?
They're very open. I was actually very, very surprised to see a fully packed room with so many people actually were lining outside the hearing room, wanting to hear what's going on in China. Of course, as we know, a lot of things are happening between the U.S. and China relations, and there is a trade war, there is the accusation, China's intellectual property theft, and above everything else, I think religious freedom has become the forefront issue to the Trump administration in its foreign policy, and of course to the global church. We have seen the persecution in China has reached to a really new level that we have not seen since the beginning of a cultural revolution by Chairman Mao in 1960s.
I mean, that's kind of hard to believe because that was a very difficult time for Christians in China. Why do you think, Bob, now that the government of China is really clamping down on the churches?
Why this time and why now? I think it really goes to the nature of the Chinese Communist Party and to the current leader led by President and Chairman, Party Secretary Xi Jinping. And as we all know, the nature of the Communist Party, communism itself, is to try to control anything and any organization and individual that pose a so-called political threat without its absolute control is not tolerable. So unfortunately, under this new leadership by President Xi Jinping, he elevated the expansion, the growth of Chinese Christian faith as a national security threat. So he made this issue is a threat to his Communist Party's ruling. So I think that's why all of a sudden on February the 1st, the Communist Party passed this new law called Regulation on Religious Affairs, and then under the banner of so-called syncretization of Christianity to make it compatible with socialism.
Yeah, so that's putting the church under even a greater control under the government. I mean, there's already the government-controlled state church, and even they're being affected. We can understand maybe the house church wanting to take greater control, but this even affects, the state government-controlled church.
You are very right. So one of the major difference between this campaign led by President Xi and the rest of the persecution, back before 2018, is this campaign even started and target this government-sanctioned, supposedly legally registered and protected churches. And after February the 1st, thousands of these government-sanctioned churches were being impacted with the crosses being forcefully demolished and being destroyed and burned. And just October the 1st, the Chinese National Day, it happened to be a Sunday, that one Sunday alone, in one little township in Henan province, only 3 out of 200 government-sanctioned churches were allowed to operate, and the rest of the 197 were totally shut down. And every house church in that township was shut down. This is just one of the many thousands of townships in China. It's happening.
We're just about out of time here, Bob, but I just wanted to quickly ask you, though, we've seen under the Cultural Revolution when the government tried to squash the church, and then it led to probably one of the greatest revivals over the last number of decades, the growth of the Chinese church. Do you think this kind of persecution will strengthen the church, or do you think it will impact the church in a negative way?
It will, in the short run, maybe impact the church, in a relatively negative way. But as you said, I mean, also the history for Christianity has proved again and again. I hope President Xi read, a little bit of history to understand this campaign will not succeed, and the church will be even more dynamic, will have more revival, and it will only accelerate the kind of revival, Christianization of China, according to the projection by 2030, even with the heaviest persecution in China, the number of Chinese Christians will definitely reach to 224 million.
Wow.
And I think it will make the days come earlier than 2030. So we will see how President Xi might become God's faithful servant, in the opposite way.
Well, God does work in amazing ways through government leaders. Bob Fu, the president and founder of China Aid, thank you for your time, and we'll continue to pray for China. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you for your prayer.